The escalator. At the end of Final Destination 4, Nick realizes that he and his friends are still on death's list, so he rushes to a mall to try to save his girlfriend, Lori, and their friend, Janet. The two are in a movie theater when, suddenly, an explosion rocks the place. Janet dies on the spot, but Nick and Lori manage to escape. But only for a few minutes, because right after that, they wind up in one of the most nerve-wracking scenes in the franchise. On an escalator, Nick does everything he can to save his girlfriend, but she still gets pulled into the gears. Bro, I'm pretty sure this scene traumatized a lot of people, myself included. In the film, we find out it was all just a vision, but in real life, something terrifyingly similar did happen, and it was all caught on camera. In July 2015 in China, 30-year-old Xiang Lujuan was stepping off an escalator at a mall when the metal floor plate suddenly collapsed under her feet. In a split-second act of heroism, she managed to shove her young son toward a mall worker, saving him. Employees tried to pull her back, but within seconds, the moving machinery dragged her underneath, right in front of everyone. Firefighters spent 4 hours dismantling the escalator to recover her body. Later reports said a single loose bolt left during maintenance triggered this entire nightmare. The deadly pool. In Final Destination 4, we get the scene that traumatized me the most. Hunt's lucky coin slips into a pool, so he dives in to retrieve it, never guessing the nightmare that's about to happen. Moments earlier, he'd switched on the pool's suction system himself, so when he goes after the coin, Hunt is pulled toward the drain and suffers one of the franchise's most agonizing deaths. Like I said, this scene scarred me. I was afraid to swim in pools for years, but as I got older, I realized the death doesn't really make sense. It's pretty over the top. But then I saw this comment, and this one. Great, now my trauma's back. When I looked up what actually happened, I was terrified. And the worst part is it involved a little girl who was only 6. It happened in June 2007 in the United States. Abigail Taylor was playing in a kiddie pool when she accidentally sat on a poorly covered drain and suffered almost the same fate as Hunt. Abby survived at first, a miracle according to doctors, and went through multiple surgeries, including organ transplants. Sadly, after months of fighting, she died from complications. Abigail's case prompted a new pool safety law in the US to help make sure a tragedy like this never happens again. But in 2009, something eerily similar made the news.
Pool drownings. It is the second leading cause of unintentional injury-related death to children 14 and under. And one little girl in Florida is lucky to be alive.
A little girl had her arm sucked into a pool drain, but firefighters rushed in and saved her. The tanning bed. In Final Destination 3, Ashley and Ashlyn survive the roller coaster disaster, only to decide it's time for a quick, fake tan. Both climb into their beds, never suspecting that death is already busy behind the scenes. They're trapped, helpless, forced to wait for the inevitable. But what if I told you something almost identical happened in real life?
She had her tanning bed catch fire while she was inside.
In 2014, a woman was getting a tan when she heard a loud pop and saw smoke. The bed had caught fire. Luckily, she wasn't trapped like the girls in the movie, so she jumped out and avoided a tragic end. But the next real-life story takes a deadly turn. The elevator. In Final Destination 2, we witness one of the franchise's most unsettling moments. Nora, still grieving the loss of her son, steps into an elevator with a seriously creepy stranger. As she tries to leave, her hair snags on one of the hooks he's carrying, trapping her head between the closing doors. People rush to help. But you know how these deaths end. The scariest part? Elevator entrapments like this have happened multiple times in real life. In August 2003 at a Houston hospital, United States, Dr. Hitoshi Nakaido met a horrific fate. He rushed into an elevator and the doors closed on his shoulder and neck. Before he could react, the car suddenly shot upward. The result was tragic. The young surgeon died instantly. Physician assistant Kari Leah Steinau, who was already inside, witnessed everything and spent more than an hour trapped in the elevator with Dr. Nakaido's head.
I just keep seeing the look in his eyes,
she later told police. The incident was documented in official reports and news coverage at the time. And as I said, it's not the only case. In 1995 in the Bronx, a man was decapitated while holding an elevator door open for another passenger. And in 2019, Sam Weisbrun also met a tragic end because of an elevator.
The elevator doors open. Sam stepped into the lobby. He was half in, half out. Then suddenly the elevator dropped like a stone to the basement. With the elevator door still open, Sam struggled to get out, but the elevator crushed him to death.
The log truck. You're cruising down the highway when you spot a rig stacked high with giant logs. If you've seen Final Destination 2, you probably feel a shiver and swerve into the next lane on instinct. In the film's iconic opening, the chains on a logging truck snap, and those massive logs tumble onto the road, one slamming straight into Officer Thomas. The next moments are pure devastation, except it's all just Kimberly's vision. Bro, that scene scarred a whole generation. But what if I told you something almost exactly like it actually happened in real life? The massive highway crash in Final Destination 2 was actually inspired by a real 2002 pileup on Interstate 75 in Georgia. In real life, a heavy fog bank triggered the wreck, but just like in the movie, dozens of vehicles were mangled. And while flying logs thankfully aren't an everyday hazard, loads falling off trucks are. In July 2020, for example, a scene straight out of Hollywood played out on another Georgia road when a log slipped off a rig and punched straight through an ambulance's windshield. Luckily, no one lost their life in that incident. But in 2025, a man in Virginia wasn't so lucky. He was driving his pickup when he bumped into the back of a log truck. The shifting load pierced the cab and the driver suffered fatal injuries. The nail gun. In Final Destination 3, Wendy and Kevin try to warn Ian and Aaron that death is still coming. Nobody believes them until the hardware shop turns deadly. Wendy saves Ian, but Aaron isn't so lucky. And yes, real life has served up almost the same horror. In 2023, a California apprentice carpenter was using a pneumatic nail gun when it double fired. One nail ricocheted off another and shot straight through his tongue and into the base of his skull. Incredibly, he survived, but in 2013, a 33-year-old worker wasn't so lucky. His nail gun fired straight into his eye and he died on the spot. Exploding grill. At the end of Final Destination 2, our heroes think they've finally cheated death. And, well, they sort of do, until they realize one last name is still on the list: Brian Gibbons. By the time Kimberly and Officer Burke catch on, it's already too late. Believe it or not, something similar happened in real life. At a church cookout, a dangerous amount of propane built up around a barbecue grill. When a volunteer lit it, the fuel ignited and the lid blew open so violently it struck the man and killed him instantly. Different from the movie, but every bit as brutal.
We're in shock, she's in shock, and we are trusting God for her life.
The roller coaster. Final Destination 3 opens with one of the franchise's most haunting set pieces, a roller coaster catastrophe that pops into your head every time you line up for a ride. In the film, we soon learn it's only Wendy's vision. But something even worse has happened in real life. On September 28, 2019, at La Feria de Chapultepec in Mexico City, the Quimera coaster derailed. Witnesses said everything was normal until a sharp crack echoed through the park. The train's last car suddenly flew off the track at full speed. Two young men, just 18 and 21, were thrown roughly 30 feet and died instantly. Two women were pulled from the wreckage with severe injuries. Parkgoers described pure chaos. Bodies on the ground, panicked crowds sprinting with no idea what had just happened. Investigators later found the ride had a history of mechanical problems, and the park was permanently closed after the tragedy. The cursed flight. A group of students boards a plane bound for Paris. Minutes before takeoff, one passenger panics. He's just had a vivid premonition of the jet exploding in midair. He and a few friends force their way off, shocking everyone else. And from the gate, they watch in horror as the jet erupts into a fireball overhead. That's the opening of Final Destination 1, where Alex saves several classmates from Flight 180 moments before disaster. Here's the chilling part. Something eerily similar really happened. The script was inspired by a news story about a mother who begged her daughter not to board a specific return flight from Hawaii because she had a bad feeling. The daughter listened, and soon after, that plane crashed. And if the scene feels familiar, it's because the fictional Flight 180 strongly echoes the real-world TWA Flight 800 tragedy. On July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800 took off from New York, bound for Paris. Just 12 minutes later, the jet exploded and crashed into the Atlantic, claiming all 230 lives on board. Investigators later found that a short circuit ignited fuel vapors in the center tank, triggering the blast. No one survived. However, reports claim that a handful of people skipped the flight at the very last minute, supposedly because of uneasy feelings or sudden changes of plan. Pretty chilling, right? The next time you spot a logging truck, step onto an escalator, or find yourself in any of these situations, please be careful. Sometimes real life copies horror movies in the most terrifying ways. 2 more videos are popping up on screen. Check them out. And if you want to help me out, drop a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.